You're listening to Humans in Tech. Our podcast explores today's most transformative technology and the trends of tomorrow, bringing together the brightest minds in and outside of our industry. We unpack what's new in physical access, identity verification, cybersecurity, and IoT ecosystems. We reach beyond the physical world, discuss our digital transformation as a species, and dive into the emerging phygital experience. Join us on our journey as we discover just how connected the future will be and how we will fit into that picture. Your host is Lee Dow, VP of Global Marketing at Identiv.
Welcome to Humans in Tech, and thank you for tuning in. Today in our innovation series and technology trends, we're talking with Prachee Kale about one of my favorite topics, design thinking. Prachee is an entrepreneur and multidisciplinary industry professional with an impressive 17-year career spanning 4 unique areas: cybersecurity and tech, business strategy, diversity and inclusion, and executive coaching. Now, as the co-founder of Think.Design.Cyber, a founding executive fellow of Cyber Theory Institute, and a woman of color, she has weaved all of her experiences to help advance the cybersecurity industry. Prachee, thank you so much for being here today to talk about your vast experience in cybersecurity, specifically design thinking for cybersecurity.
My pleasure, Lee.
Your resume is so very impressive. You have a master's degree in bioinformatics from George Washington University, which is, all about building tech for biological research.
Yep.
You've written code, conducted scientific experiments on HIV viruses. You did PCR tests. Yeah, those.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Think invasive viruses, the pandemic, and cybersecurity. So tell us more about that journey, because those are a lot of dots that maybe most people would not have connected.
Yeah, and I'm great. I'm glad you prefaced it with that, but I am an obsessive dot connector by nature, and it served me very well. And I have to say, my master's program was one of the most meaningful learning experiences in my life, and it really set the foundation for my design thinking mindset and, the foundation for the work that we're doing at Think.Design.Cyber. And for the benefit of the listeners, bioinformatics blends biology, math, computer science, and physics to create those software solutions. And my focus of study was the correlation of human genome. It's really around, the Human Genome Project that was going on at the time, and its correlation with infectious diseases, and specifically HIV viruses. That's where I had to do a lot of these tests, a lot of these studying around virology. So I took classes both in the med school and engineering school. And we first had to learn about the biology of the human body, right? And how the virus at the time, based on the knowledge that was available at the time, interacted with our body. And what was mind-blowing to me at the time was that the virus literally changes our DNA in the way that it operates inside, the host, like a human body once it's infected, right? And so understanding how it works before we even embarked upon the possibility of doing any kind of computational solution for it was just amazing. And the highlight of this journey, I'll say was working at NIH on the follow-up of the Human Genome Project. It had just concluded, I believe, in 2003, and it was widely celebrated as a feat of biological research about decoding the human DNA. But I always presented as saying it was one of the biggest wins in computational science, because it pushed the envelope of not only, software solutioning, computational research, and, informational management theories, really is what I call it. It was like one of the largest databases in the world at the time. It really pushed people to come together, lead, strategize, and collaborate. And to watch that happen so closely was a true blessing. And I'll highlight 3 learnings that I wanted to share with the audience here today. Is very similar, has very parallels to cyber. Number one was one computational scientist saw the challenge and said, this, and I kid you not, this is printed somewhere. People can find the paper, but he said this effort is like working with both hands tied behind, blindfolded, and in a vacuum. Now, who doesn't say that in cybersecurity today?
Right.
The
And then all
problem
of us who sign up for that.
oh my goodness, yes. But all of us are mission driven, right? Ambitious, brilliant, committed people who want to make us the world a safer place, right? So the problem is highly complex but solvable if all components are addressed in it. The second one was distinguishing the signal from the noise. This is how biologists approach solutioning versus, not versus, yes, and detecting anomalies to make accurate interpretation. And that's how us computer scientists tend to approach problem, right? What's my anomaly? Forget all the stuff that looks okay. Blending both of that was a big approach sort of blending that happened in the Human Genome Project, which again, today in cyber is very relevant. And the last and the most important point that is near and dear to my heart is I saw the power of empowering people to lead, strategize, and collaborate. I mean, I cannot emphasize that enough. And I feel like it is so lost in this whole cyber game today. It's just unacceptable to me. But I think those were the three main things I'd like to highlight.
I'm really interested in your degree. I love the multifaceted approach that you have to take to study that. I just finished in August a week-long course at the Stanford Graduate School of Business around product innovation. And what I learned was they have a D school there, and they have all of their students, regardless of their program discipline, attend that school. And it's the only school at the university that all students have to attend and collaborate and practice design thinking and learn that skill. And I just think that's so mission critical to our ability to find solutions that have multiple points of view. And take into account diversity equations and things like that. So I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, absolutely. In systems theory, it's called like wicked problems, right? They've all of these, the big SDG goals that are out there and, the United Nations that put out there are really wicked problems: poverty, hunger, right? Cybersecurity is another one, gender diversity, all of these. They don't have one right way of doing it, but it's a large problem that has to then get broken down. So absolutely, the D School is a big philosophy of design that we incorporate into the work. But we also look at the East Coast School of Design, which really focuses on the industrial solutioning side of things. So think assembly lines and creating, scaling products and things like that.
Right. Okay. I'm not as familiar with that. I'll definitely look into it though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that how you got into cybersecurity? Is it because so many of the experiences you've had in your background are applicable?
I like I said, I'm an obsessive dot connector. So I kind of am a design thinker too. I solve my personal problems using design thinking, which is just a habit of mine. But my love affair, as I say it, with cyber started when I was 16 years old. I had managed to grab, a book on ethical hacking. I think it was at a library somewhere. And it really appealed to my teenage rebellious nature. And I was like, oh my God, I can get into other people's computers sitting at home, like at my desk or my bed. And that was amazing. And I literally gobbled up the book, and only to realize later that if this fell into malicious, people with malicious intent, how bad it can be. And fast forward through many work experiences, in consulting as well as in the industry, I'm happy to declare it's still, active, and, we're steady relationship going on, but that work experience has informed, Think.Design.Cyber and the work we're doing there.
Well, and it's definitely a topic, right, that is an area of practice is not going away and is only continuing to increase, right, as an important issue. What's your biggest focus in the industry?
Yeah, the biggest focus actually came out of the experiences, a lot of the data we've collected, and my desire to create solutions that don't exist before. And at Think.Design.Cyber, we focus on problems in cybersecurity that technology alone could not solve, right? There are so many good technology solutions out there, and yet breach rates are high, right? Yet there is so much time, money, and resource. And some of the top issues that, our audiences and our clients voice are burn and churn, the work-life conflict issue, wasted time and money. The big one is the sense of antagonism. This is within the corporate environment mostly. And, feeling siloed, right? And feeling ill-equipped to handle all these issues. And when we started looking at this, right, we're just design thinking. We're just like, what is happening? And we realized that these are symptoms of deeper problems. And when we really, lifted up the hood and started looking at it, um, we realized that the problems weren't have to do with the technology that is in question or the threats and attacks. It was really around methods and people in cybersecurity. And I simplified by using a stoplight analogy, red, amber, green. The red is really the methods and people obscured behind all of the technology that is available, and the focus on the threats and attacks. And when I say methods, I mean processes, right? Controls, frameworks, lines of defense, and such. And then we dug into that a little bit more, and we realized they were borrowed from other disciplines, right? Cyber evolved not as a formal discipline, but just like borrowed from here and there once it came out of the network hole.
Right.
And a lot of these methods, an example would be lines of defense in the risk management space, is really unsuitable, right? Lines of defense is about segregation of duties. You're putting three teams. Yeah, you really have three big lines, right? The front line, second line, and the third line, the audit. The second line is typically risk management. Front line is business and IT. In my experience and my colleagues' experiences, where that created so much antagonism and a sense of mistrust that people were afraid to collaborate beyond, across those lines.
Oh, 100%. I had an employer who I will not name names, but I remember going through a factory audit and a global factory audit, and I can remember the lead manager on the factory side. When we would get on the phone with the internal auditing team and tell all of us we weren't allowed to speak or say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But think about this, right? But lines of defense were, again, inspired from military or sports. In both situations, there are rules of engagement that are, mostly followed, right?
Right.
In cybersecurity, there are no rules of engagement. And what you're trying to do is create opposing teams in the same organization that need to work together to tackle an adversary that is outside the environment, aside from insider risk, right? That's another one, right? And that blows people's mind when I tell them. They're like, oh my God, I never looked at it this way. And I said, yes, what if I take all three of you, or this was just my idea at the time, in which we've translated into our workshops, is get you out of your office, let's put you in a room. And these are, again, brilliant problem solving people, right? Technical and just amazing people to be around. How quickly could you come up with a solution for your company if you weren't fighting across those lines? And most of my effort has gone into building those stakeholder relationships across lines and coaching other people in cybersecurity how to do that, so their initiatives and the company's critical initiatives could move forward, right? And the cyber people are not no people anymore.
I really like your concept of design thinking being about designing solutions that consider the human behavior pattern, not just the technology.
Yep.
I love that.
And the methods, right? The methods really box people in. If I'm supposed to operate in an environment like this, I can't create. So it's like, with all this clutter, all this noise, you're restricting me, boxing my thinking. The conformist nature of cybersecurity starts to really become, prevalent in that. So that really opened our minds around what, those problems were. And the amber light, just before I conclude this point, is the technology. There are some amazing technical solutions out there, right? But again, it requires leadership and strategy to really pull them together and identify, in context of one's organization, what is required, right? And cybersecurity people are not traditionally coached to do that. They're coached, as specialists, right? They're trained as specialists in a very technical way, and then they don't learn those skills, or they do learn those skills when it's very late, and that middle management and early career band of employees really lose out on this opportunity, right? So the technology solutions are out there, the integration of them, or interoperability, if I call it. Like, think about a plane, right? If Airbus or Boeing is manufacturing a plane, they source parts from different vendors, but somehow the plane takes off, works all, lands, right? It's a great experience. That's not happening in cyber either. So what is going on there? And so those are like our three main focus areas. And then the green light is where I say is all the attention and energy is being focused is the discussion and the offensive and defensive posture around the threats and attacks. And I'm not saying that has to be eliminated. What I'm saying is when 100% of your resources, time, energy, focus goes there, the red and the amber light is what is going to get ignored. But unless we solve those, no matter how many technical solutions are out there, it's not going to solve cybersecurity.
One of the things that you said that really resonates with me is on the problem solving. I think that our schools, especially K through 12, are getting better at teaching students to solve problems together.
Yes.
And collaborate on problem solving. I know for me, it sounds like we have somewhat similar personalities. One of my favorite things to do is to be given some hairy problems to solve, and especially in like digital transformation and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned about my own personality, in fact, is if you handed me an organization that was running perfectly perfect, I'd probably break something just to fix it.
I am like that too. Yeah. Operations for me is not
same.
It's not a thing.
Exactly.
Don't.
Same.
Not that I'm attracted to chaos, but I like to solve problems or see things that don't exist, right? Or between the lines.
Exactly. I'm the exact same way. So you talking about problem solving and collaborating on that really resonates with me. So given that, how did you get involved with design thinking specifically for cybersecurity? Because there's surely a lot of design thinking and problem solving in that equation.
It is. And what was interesting? I didn't truly think about formalizing this in a Think.Design.Cyber way until I met my co-founder, Brian Barnier. And he, by the way, is an icon, a veteran in the cybersecurity and risk management space, financial. He's an economist as well, done a lot of good work in cybersecurity and all of that. So anyway, so when we met through a networking and we started talking, and both of us had similar observations, much like you and I. And suddenly we both realized, we're using the same approach to look at this. And, we're like, he said, "Are you an engineer by training?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I am too. And how are you, what are you thinking?" And I said, "Design thinking." And then that got us talking. And what we suddenly realized was design thinking has been formally applied in so many industries, never in cyber. Right?
Really?
Within a company, when we talk to people, we ask them to go check out, does your company have an innovation lab? Yes. Does it use design thinking to solve, create new products and services? Yes. Do they look at humans? Yes. Do they do that for cyber? No. So,
wow.
Right? Yeah. And not only that, when they're embarking on a new initiative, right, something that's completely new product, they set up their people for success. They give them training. People are trained for sales. People are trained for customer service. People are trained technically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does that happen in cybersecurity? It doesn't. Technology, yes. Technical skills, yes. Lots of CISM, CISSP, and litany of other certifications. But truly that for innovation purpose as a process in cyber organizations doesn't exist.
That's the second reference we've had today about economists. We had another guest that we recorded earlier today who is an economist, an economist by training, by education, working in cybersecurity. My undergraduate degrees are geopolitical strategy. So certainly economics and geopolitical strategy obviously desperately need design thinking. And people who can understand those, macro and micro elements. And I think cybersecurity is like that too. You really need to be able to think big and strategically, but you also need to understand, the elements that add up to an equation, like to solve a problem.
At all levels, right? Not only when you're a CISO or the next level down. And I think that is a huge opportunity. And, after meeting Brian, we ended up writing a paper, paper, of course, I come from a master's background, but it won Article of the Year award in 2020. It's called Cybersecurity, the End Game. And that's where we defined all of these method and people issues that we talked about. We use the term structural flaws. It's it's a common term used in systems thinking to talk about flaws that are designed in, think about flaws in the foundation of your home, right? So no amount of interior design is going to help you fix that unless you actually fix the structural flaws. So lines of defense, for example, we categorized it under structural flaw, and that was very well received by people. And, then I happened to meet John Kindervag, who is the creator of Zero Trust. Unlike many people, who thinks zero trust was actually created by some professional organization. It wasn't. It was one person's, brainchild. And he talks about, his zero trust strategy, which has been interpreted many different ways, as turned into a gimmick, whatever. But his concept, which we call authentic zero trust, largely leverages design principles. And it's challenging for people because it's counterintuitive in nature, because it's exactly asking you to take your focus off the threats and attacks and look inward and start that journey, which is also very parallel to coaching. Think about driving a people change. You just got to start look inward, right? To create any outward change in your life, in your career.
And people change is not easy.
And it isn't easy.
Yeah.
Nope. And so, fast forward, we ended up, partnering. So there's a design thinking course coming out in November on the cybered.io side. We have outcomes accelerator workshops. As I mentioned before, we work with our clients, focusing on a lot of the design thinking process itself for their problems. And then I was very happy to create a program for introverted cyber professionals, transforming them into business leaders, which I neglected to mention as a point in the people issue. 60% of cyber workforce identifies as introverts.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
And the scope of that work has expanded. They literally have to go now talk in meetings, drive change, as you said, organizational change, leadership, speak in board meetings, management committee meetings.
Are they?
And that's a task.
Are they also highly risk adverse with respect to change? So I would think people who work in cybersecurity, would be very risk adverse just by nature.
I don't attribute it to the introversion. I think it's more of the conformism. We've always done it this way, so why do we need to change it?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I wouldn't attribute it being the reason, but yes, I largely say it's conformism, right? This is how it's been done. Why do we need to change it? It's worked so far, or it hasn't worked, but there's no other way. So that box thinking is sometimes blocks people from looking at out of the box solutions. But once you sort of loosen them up and get them, out of that mode, you really start to see some nice ideas flowing. And that's just very rewarding.
What are the main principles of design thinking? Because I think most people, they hear that, but they don't really know what it means.
Yes. So oversimplified version, right? And applicable to tech and non-tech problems, as well as, like I said, personal transformation as well. But 5 main principles. Number 1 is problem framing. And this is by far, for me, the most important step in the process, is framing the problem in the right way and framing it in multiple different ways before you actually go to solve it. And this is a very engaging process that I go through with all our clients in framing this problem several different ways, taking all aspects into consideration. And many times a client will wake up and say, I don't think this is a technology problem. We've been having these failed implementations. I admit that my solution wasn't stable in my environment. And secondly, I think it's a people issue, and more people, it was a collaboration issue or a trust issue. So we started to dig deeper, right? We start asking some critical thinking questions. We ask some, put some systems principles in there, and really starts to uncover the real problems, as we call it, right? So that problem framing step is really important. Number 2 is challenging norms and assumptions. It's around reframing the norms and assumptions that led to the problem in the first place. Number 3 is understanding how it works. Like similar to the Human Genome Project in my master's work, I really had to understand how the human body worked. If when the virus was in the body, the reaction, the suppression, the elevation of certain different mechanisms in the body, and so that when you're solving for it, you understand the context in which the problem has to be solved. Design and implement with speed, and obviously gathering feedback as you're doing that in an iterative format. And number 5 is continual improvement. Again, you get the feedback, you go back and make changes. So in a very oversimplified way, 5 principles, the first 3, problem framing, challenging norms and assumptions, and how it works, can be nonlinear.
I love the idea of the problem framing. So that class that I referenced earlier, one of the very first sessions that we did was around design thinking. And one of the things that we went out and we did surveys with just random people at a mall.
Yes.
And we were tasked with, each group was tasked with coming back and agreeing on the problem to be solved. And it was so interesting to see how many of us missed solving a real problem. How many of us maybe found the problem, but then the solution had nothing to do with the problem.
Exactly.
And having somebody who really understands those pillars and facilitate you through that process is really important, because it's super easy to take yourselves down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And you really need someone to sort of rein that in. And like you said, it's very easy to go down the wrong path. But sometimes, that is also the process. So one should give themselves the time to do that.
So, what role does data then play when applying design thinking in cybersecurity?
Data is always playing a critical role. But, in a short answer would be, for me, data is a living, breathing organism, right? Seeing it used in the context of, my past experiences, of course, it really has to be used and applied in the right context. And for cybersecurity, I really talk about the data that you have to protect, right? From any security strategy you're applying, what data am I supposed to protect? And the second, the data that is used to protect that data that you want to protect. And so it's not just one-sided view, to look at both.
At Identiv, we take a lot of pride in solving customer problems with the customer at the center. And as we've already discussed, it's even with all that data, sometimes it's really hard to frame the problem that you're trying to solve and come up with a solution that is really relevant and beneficial for a customer. Explain how design thinking is critical to the design and success of products in cybersecurity.
Oh, it's absolutely imperative. And it's, I did a podcast for actually specifically geared to cyber vendors on Cybersecurity Unplugged several months ago. And we really talked about the importance of vendors in this ecosystem, right? I mean, all of you all are putting so much, brain power and even emotional commitment into, providing solutions for the industry. But I think what is also people need to appreciate that, but despite all of these amazing solutions being there, we are yet to solve or make cybersecurity reliable, right? And cyber careers rewarding. So what can the vendors do when they're creating those products? Not only think about the end user. Now, your end user could be, a SOC, or it could be, an anti-phishing software or something, would directly impact, a person sitting in a cubicle. But to really look at the whole breadth of the ecosystem in which your solution is going to be implemented, right? A lot of times I was on the buyer end of the process for several years, right? What I think would really distinguish a vendor from another vendor is that contextual knowledge, and to really see how this software fits in not only in the cybersecurity outcomes, but in the broader business outcomes. And vendors who are able to do that and fuse the cyber outcomes with business outcomes will absolutely stand out. And I think that's, again, huge opportunity for the success of products in cybersecurity.
I really liked your airplane reference earlier. So I used to work in aerospace, so I can relate to it. And one of the things in that ecosystem, if you will, when you have a new aircraft platform, is from nose to tail, almost all the components in there are not made by Boeing or Airbus.
Exactly.
And it requires a lot of co-opetition. It requires all of the suppliers, and then you have systems integrators, right, who make those things work together, whether that's the Boeing or Airbus or someone else. And so you have components, you have subcomponents, and all of those companies, the players, the pieces and parts must work together, must have triple redundancy, must not fail. And the level of collaboration required to do that, I think, is a very good model for the cybersecurity industry.
Absolutely. And even, we went a step further. We actually interviewed NTSB, past NTSB officials and some pilots. My brother is a 737 pilot, right? He's a commercial pilot. And also the level of training he gets, on the instrument itself, right? He knows exactly how it works, because if he's in a situation, it's only his brain and his training that is going to get him an exit strategy.
Right.
right? And, think about landing the plane, the plane in the Hudson, or even if everything is going fine, again, how do you distinguish the signal from the noise? And that kind of training is extremely important. One thing also, which I feel like the burnout and stress, Heidrick and Struggles came out with this fascinating study, I think it was published last month. I encourage everybody to read it, around the personal risks that CISOs are saying is burnout and stress. They're not worried about their job or breaches. That's their largest personal risk, is burnout and stress. And pilots, just you're familiar with the aviation industry, are trained on managing mental agility, right? My brother goes through trainings. His hours are capped. That is not happening in cybersecurity, yet the amount of risk, the amount of stress, and the what's at stake, I feel is equal, if not more.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I have one last question for you. What are the main benefits of design thinking in cybersecurity?
Oh goodness, I'm gonna answer this question in the context of how we're applying cybersecurity, right? Like I said, methods, number one. Unless we solve the structural flaws that are in cybersecurity as a discipline, no matter how many tech solutions we put out there, it's not going to help us gain the ground that we need to cover right now. The second is the most important one, around empowering people to become business leaders, to become strategists, to become problem solvers, and really learn how to reach across those lines and work with each other. And I think that is going to be the catalyzer that we need for really shifting our cybersecurity position in the industry today. And the last one that I tell everybody also is around the no FUD approach. Right, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that has festered in the community, and almost a sense of powerlessness. Right, if you're applying design thinking, you're training your mind. You're literally creating new neural pathways, and this is what you accomplish when you're going through the coaching program. You're retraining your brain to look at solutions and not get bogged down, really, or just be impeded by that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That is prevalent everywhere, but the goal is, how do you hunker down and start solving, to your point, the co-opetition, the collaboration that is required within the organization. It's been done in different areas before. People have turned companies around. I mean, we understand how humans are made because of the success of the Human Genome Project. We can absolutely do it for cybersecurity.
It was wonderful to have you on the show today. I really appreciate you joining us and taking the time out of your day to participate in the Humans in Tech podcast.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it.
If you liked this podcast, please like and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Thursday.
The problem isn't security, it's awareness. Velocity Vision is the future of visual surveillance, an intelligent video management solution that delivers real-time situational awareness in an open security platform. Integrate with your existing systems, verify your environment in one pane of glass, and increase the efficiency of your security operation. Get full control of your environment when and where you need it. Learn more at Identiv.com. Get access control anywhere, anytime, for less money out of pocket. Highly Secure Freedom Cloud is a cloud-based access control as a service offered through a cost-effective subscription model, allowing users to control, manage, and maintain their physical access control systems via Freedom's intuitive, always up-to-date, browser-based web administration. Learn more at Identiv.com. Physical security, identity verification, the IoT. The hyperconnectivity of our lives will only grow more pervasive. As technology becomes more automated and experiences more augmented, it's up to us to preserve our humanity and use new tools and trends for good. The only question is, are we up for the challenge?